You've got 95-degree days, beautiful sunny summer here in Fort Collins. And then you get a flash flood, 3 inches in 1 hour, sunny Lubbock's, blue agave, parts of CSU flooding, and just absolutely, cools down the extremely hot day. And I think there's some correlation, some similarities between that and the real estate market. We are coming to you live. This is the August 2023 Fort Collins, specifically Northern Colorado, Fort Collins real estate market update. We're going to look at some national trends, some population numbers, median sales price, days on market, things of that nature. We're going to jump into some numbers. And then here shortly, we will share the screen. If you're watching this on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, we are going to be sharing the screen with some bar graphs, data, and things of that nature. But what I wanted to look at was, what does the nation look like versus Colorado versus Larimer County and Fort Collins, and how are we similar and how are we the same? A lot of the conversations that's going on right now are interest rates, inventory. Those are really the two commonalities that people are talking about when in regards to the real estate market, and then ultimately representing affordability and prices. Really, those are kind of what are the basis for those conversations. But nationally, now this information is coming from the National Association of Realtors, Colorado Association of Realtors, and IRIS, our local MLS here in Northern Colorado and Colorado. New listings year over year nationally is down 25.7%. Colorado down 23.6%, Larimer County down 16%, Fort Collins down 19%. People just aren't selling their houses. They're sticking in and keeping with those 3% mortgages that they've got. Over a third of the U.S. populace has mortgages under 3%, and a substantial amount have under 5% and 4%. So they're just not putting their houses on their market unless they have a compelling reason to do so. Total housing inventory, nationally is down 13.6%. Colorado down 12.23%. Larimer County up 6%, which a big portion of Larimer County is Fort Collins, which is up 25.8%. Now, this is looking at June of 2023 versus June of 2022 specifically. We will also get into July's numbers here shortly. But it's interesting because inventory here in Fort Collins and Northern Colorado, Timnath, Windsor, Loveland, Wellington seems to be sitting a little bit longer. And so inventory is actually increasing versus what it did last year. Home prices, pretty much flat across the board. National down 0.2%, Colorado down 0.67%, Larimer County down 1.7%, and Fort Collins up 0.7%. Now, I'm going to go ahead and actually share my screen because I want you guys to just kind of see it while I'm talking. Let's go right here. All right. That should get you guys where I'm looking at. Ooh, that's not a very attractive. Let's go ahead and share screen. Stop share, present. Let's go share screen. Entire screen. All right. Hopefully you guys can see this. It might not be necessarily the best. So current, let's see here. Yeah. Current market analysis. Median sales price, July of 2023, up to $693,000. We are at almost $700,000 the median sales price here in Fort Collins. That is wild. When I bought my first house in 2012 in Loveland, it was $162,000. We're going to get to some interesting information here shortly when you guys see the bar graph looking at population and listings, which will really kind of help you understand better pricing versus 627 last year. So actually our July versus July numbers were up 10.5%. Homes for sale, 294 homes, July 2023 versus July 2022 of 249. So up 18%. Months of supply, 2.2 versus 1.4. Up 57.1%. A level market is 6%, 6 months, suggesting that, like, easiest numbers. If 100 homes sold in a month, if every month on average 100 homes sold, and there were 600 homes on the market, active listings, it would take 6 months for those homes to sell if no new homes came on the market. That is what months of inventory is representing. And right now we are at 2.2 months. So it's still a very strong seller's market, suggesting not a lot of supply to meet what the current demand is. Days on market, though, definitely increasing. 41 days versus 28 days. I was trying to talk to my team this morning about kind of what this represents. Even though 41 days is still extremely short, I was like, man, honestly, it's like doing a plank, and you're doing it for a minute long. Like for me, a minute plank seems like an eternity. And if I had to add 40% to that to go up to, a minute and a half, I'm struggling. But in the grand scheme of things, Barbie, Margot Robbie, I think Margot, I'm not sure. She just did like a 4-minute plank. So, she just crushes me, puts me out, just makes me look, weak. And I would say actually a lot of people are stronger when it comes to planks. So the average, probably is closer to like 60 to 70 days for days on market. And we calculate that in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, from when a home hits the market to when a home sells. So 41 days is literally only 11 days on the market really before it goes under contract, because our contract period is about 30 days. What does the future look like? Well, new listings, they are still coming, just not that much. 211 listings in July of 2023 versus 251. So we had 16% new listings. But our demand and our supply are kind of staying in line. Like our demand is decreasing as much as our new listings are. If we had this inversion where our new listings were just incredibly high, but our demand, which are under contract and closed sales, are down 14.4% and 18.8% respectively, we are seeing new listings our inventory is just slowly creeping up. And so that's why you see a pretty decent price increase July this year versus July of last year, because we still just don't have a ton of inventory. All right. I want to see, can anyone tell me, that looks just like crap. Let me see if I can just pull this aside and get a better screen for you guys. So let's go here, remove. Okay, let's go. Remove, stop screen share, present, share screen, window. I think this will be much more, hopefully this is much cleaner for you guys watching on YouTube, Facebook, and everything like that. But this is really so that's what I was just saying. New listings are matching the decreased demand of homes. Mortgage applications down 23% this week versus last week, this year versus last week, last year, same week. So our demand is down 18%, but so are our listings. So they're kind of staying in lockstep with each other. But here's something super interesting. This looks back to 2007. This is the U.S. Census Bureau numbers for population and average on a 12-month average monthly of listings. So, in 2007 and 8, before the Great Recession, we had on average almost 1,500 homes for sale each month. And our population was close to 130,000 people. Well, over the last 16 years, our population's closer to 172,000, almost 180,000 people. But our average active listings are down closer to 250 to 300 per month. So our population has increased almost, 30 to 40%, but our listings on a monthly basis have almost, cut into a fifth of what they were. And it's just, our population's here, our listings are there. So it's a supply demand discrepancy. And that's really what are keeping these prices so very strong, which then we're looking at this. We're coming in and we're looking at our active listings versus our median sales price. So as we saw, like when they were on 1,500 per month, like, a 6-month inventory, we saw this very slow, gradual incline of our price appreciation. And since 1970s, you could always assume in Fort Collins about a 5% appreciation. Well, in 2013-14, really starting in 2011, our supply just plummeted, and our prices just started to really ratchet up pretty dramatically, especially over the last 3 years. So as we saw listings decline at a dramatic pace, we saw prices increase at a dramatic pace. And as you see right now, our monthly active listings are increasing ever so slightly, and prices are starting to flatline. I think July's numbers are a little bit interesting. I didn't share this on our data, but our price per square foot actually decreased this year over the last month. So bigger houses are selling for less dollars per square foot, but they're still bigger houses. It could suggest that people are downsizing, selling the house that they bought for $200,000 in 2013, sells it for $650,000, cashes out $400,000 and goes and buys, a smaller house for almost all cash. So there could be a lot of reasons for that, but I'm going to continue forward. Let's see here. You guys are on my screen. She clean. Oh, good. Thank you, Izzy. It's interesting because houses are selling for about 100% of what the list price is, but that doesn't mean that they hadn't had a price reduction before selling for that price. Over 55% of existing home sales on the market are having price reductions between 2.5 and 2.75%. So prior to selling, they're having to do a price reduction of some sort. But when they hit that price that the market is essentially okay at, they are selling and selling for that list price. Now, sellers are also only selling right now for compelling reasons. We're working with a lot of different sellers right now, listings and things of that nature. But here are the commonalities behind why people are selling: a job relocation, downsizing, empty nesters, divorce, death, moving for retirement, upsizing. They need to sell and get an extra bedroom. But there's not a ton of volunteer conversations right now saying, you know what? We've lived in our house for 5 years, 7 years. We love it. We just want a little bit bigger of a house or a little bit nicer area or anything along those lines. Because selling your house, we're working with a client who owns a phenomenal house in downtown Fort Collins. And they've owned it for, I think, since 2018, have a good equity in that house. And they're wanting a big primary bedroom and still stay downtown. They could probably sell their house for 1.1 to 1.2. So the houses that we're looking at are 1.3 to really 1.6. Their monthly mortgage payment is roughly about $3,000 per month. When you jump up, even parlaying all of that equity from their house into their new house, into that price point at 1.5 and putting $400,000 down, their mortgage jumps from $3,000 a month to almost $10,000 a month. So it's a really hard pill to swallow to voluntarily increase your mortgage payments. If you just want a little bit better of a house, from that $3,000 per month to $10,000 per month. But there's still reasons. And I just did an Instagram reel that suggested that, hey, if interest rates do happen to hit 5%, I think that's where sellers are going to be like, we're comfortable with that new monthly mortgage payment on the new purchase. And buyers are like, hey, we're off the sidelines and we're going to start buying. So there's definitely some interesting timing right now, but interesting news on like the interest rate side of things. The Fed just raised rates by 0.25%. That was expected. There's conversations if they're going to do any more, or if GDP still stays strong, inflation numbers, employment numbers. And if they stay constant, not do any more increases, that's kind of what the market's betting on right now, is no further increases, no cuts, but no more increases. If they start to have conversations about increases and interest rates jump from, 6.8 to 7.2, from that to like 7.5 to 8, I mean, the market will absolutely, I thought the market was going to stall out at 7. It's still pretty strong, but regardless, we are still watching inflation numbers, GDP numbers, unemployment numbers. So those all come out. But right now, if you have a 780 credit score, Turnkey Lending gave us some good information, about 6.8 to 6.9% for a 30-year fixed for a conventional, FHA 6.1%, and VA 6.5%. I was talking to a client. They were asking me what sellers are thinking right now of VA loans and if they're less than desirable. And I was like, well, all cash, quick close is always going to be your first desire. If you have a substantial conventional loan that could potentially waive an appraisal more than 20%, probably is going to be in number 2. From there, a conventional above 10%. But if you're at a conventional below 10% in a VA loan, especially if a person's military, they're going to take that VA loan. It's a very strong product, very well underwritten. There's not as much kind of barriers or hurdles as like an FHA. So if you're retired military, you definitely want to take a look at what those funding fees are, because they can get kind of expensive, even though they get rolled into that loan. It's a great product. People love it. And it's, it's a way for, honestly, to use that benefit for serving our country. So I was very strongly recommending that he consider using it. Again, I talked earlier, we are seeing a direct correlation between properties under contract down and closed sales down 14 and 18%, and new mortgage applications down 23%, which is an interesting figure because this is this week this year versus this week last year. And this week last year, interest rates were already at 6.5%. So we are seeing maybe this thought process that, hey, maybe interest rates are here at 6.5 to stay for a while. We were at 3 to 4% interest rates for a decade. I bought a 3.25% loan, or a house with a 3.25% loan in 2013. Kept on to that thinking that they would never get that low again. I bought houses throughout that time at 4%, 4.5%. And then again in 2022, 2021, refinanced to 2.75% for my personal house. But the conversation over the last year was date the rate, marry the house. Like I never once said that to a client because I'm glad I didn't, because right now it's this scary thought of maybe 6.5% isn't going to like go away anytime soon. So seeing 23% less mortgage applications this week, or I should say the week of July 27th versus the same week last year, is definitely interesting as far as appetite for affordability and mortgages. So this gets down to, what would I do if I was a buyer and what would I do if I was a seller? If I was a buyer, I'd be opportunistic. Generally speaking, the houses that you're looking at on the market are sellers that need to sell. Again, for those reasons that we discussed earlier, more marriage, divorce, death, downsizing, upsizing, job relocation, all that kind of stuff. So the conversation's a little bit different. Whereas like the motive, like you kind of could guess at least one of those motivations. Generally speaking, it's not because, well, hey, we, wanted to. It's we just, wanted a little bit of an upgrade of a house. Like it's maybe a little bit different conversation. That also being said, I would not try to time the market. We were just discussing that mortgage rates were between 3 and 4.5% for a decade. But prices went from $250,000 in Fort Collins to $600,000 in Fort Collins. So if you're sitting there waiting for mortgage rates to drop, maybe they're sitting at 6.5% for 2, 3, 4 years more. And with that discrepancy of supply and the demand, we're probably going to see prices at least at minimum remain strong unless some huge influx of houses comes for one reason or another. Prices are at this point seem like they're going to probably stay relatively strong. And new builders can't build fast enough. But I would look at new construction if I was a buyer in today's market. The first thing that I would ask, though, is on these suggested interest rates is, what is the APR? I wouldn't necessarily like say, oh man, that's great, they can lock me in at a 5.25%. See what different origination fees are and things of that nature. Have a second opinion, have a local lender that you can talk to and have them dive into those numbers. But I would still look at those because maybe, hey, a DR Horton or Lennar or Toll Brothers who are doing a production build offering so many houses on the market, in fact, can offer a more attractive interest rate fixed for 30 years. So that's one thing that I would look at as a buyer in today's market. Again, asking what the APR is of that house. But I would be opportunistic. I would not try to time the market. I would actively look at trying to get into something versus timing the market. And if the market happens to go down to 5.5%, 5% interest rates, you refinance at that time, you save some money, it's a win. But go into it thinking that interest rates are going to be at 6.5%, 6.8% for the next 5-10 years. And it's a cherry on top if they do drop. What would I do if I was a seller? Well, if you had to sell, right now you have to price it. You very much have to price it on condition, location, and what the market is doing. There's no throwing a dart at the board anymore like we used to kind of talk about with sellers of you can literally throw a dart at the board and it's probably going to sell. That is no longer the case. We had a listing in northern Colorado where the neighborhood had, like, it was a neighborhood of probably 250 houses, and there was 7 houses for sale in that neighborhood, and they were all very, very, very similar. So we had to price our house at a point that was desirable, going to stand above the rest, and go under contract. And so you definitely want to price it based off of the condition, location, and the market dynamics. If you're considering to sell because you want to move up, remember, if you've lived in that house for 2 of the last 5 years, you can sell the house and walk away with a tax-free gain for up to $250,000 as an individual and $500,000 as a couple. I got to check to make sure that's correct, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Parlaying that into your next house, consider keeping a chunk of that to help with that mortgage payments for the next 2, 3, 4 years. And hopefully they do drop back to that 5.5% and refinance at that time. But if not, your incomes should increase. You know, if you were to follow 3 to 5% increases, PSD, Poudre School District teachers, just got a 10% increase in pay. So your income should increase to hopefully take advantage of those 2 fixed portions of your mortgage, interest and principal. So that's my thoughts on the market as far as buying and selling. I don't see a ton of, thanks, Angel Milan, I appreciate you watching. I don't see a ton of questions or comments at this time, but I will stick around for a minute, and I'm going to give the screen back up for the graphs, because I thought it was super interesting. And if you're watching this on Instagram or YouTube, like I would jump over to, or Instagram, I would jump over to YouTube and Facebook specifically to look at population numbers versus active listings. So I don't see any questions at this time. I appreciate you guys all watching. We come once a month. My big takeaway, Fort Collins market, Northern Colorado market is strong unless we see a massive, massive influx of existing homes for one reason or another, or new construction somehow can add a massive amount of supply. There is this massive discrepancy between supply and demand in our population in this area. So prices at minimum should remain pretty strong. Maybe they drop a little bit, but not too much. So appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, this is live in Fort Collins, August 2023 market update. Oh, I got a couple questions. Pause. Okay. Guys, potential real estate investor. I'm going to wait until the numbers make sense, i.e. favorable rent to price ratio. That's a great comment. Thank you, Phil. I bought a rental in Severance last year. The price to rent ratio definitely doesn't make sense. They would always talk about the 1% rule in real estate investing. And I haven't had the 1% rule in Fort Collins ever, but I have tried to always have the 0.75% rule. And what that means is if you can buy a house for $500,000, it makes a good rental if you could rent it for $5,000 a month. So 1% of the purchase price and monthly rent. Well, that is not the case, but I will say that rents are increasing pretty decently. Rents are popping pretty significantly. I had one rental go from $2,350 a month to $3,000 a month. Now, that was a new rental. We always try to take care of our tenants. So on a renewal side of things, it would not have been close to that, but it was a person who moved out. So we were able to increase it pretty dramatically. But yes, I agree, Phil. It's hard to invest right now because of that price to rent ratio. But my thought is that we're going to see rents pop a whole lot more than we are going to see prices drop. And as we see rents pop, more investors are going to pile into the market. So it might be one of those things where you buy a rental that's renting for, let's call it $2,600, but rents are going to go to $3,500 in the next 2 years. And at that point, it makes a little bit more sense. So yes, I agree. I'm kind of on the sidelines as an investor, but also very, very opportunistic as well, because I do think rents, we're going to see a bigger influx because of people also, the 23% of people that aren't buying houses, the mortgage applications that are dropped, renting. Still wanting to be here, but renting. So definitely agree. All righty. No other questions. Phil, appreciate it. Yes, sir. All righty. We will see everybody later. Until next month. Take care.